Good morning. Back on the 3rd of May 2020, during the very height of the COVID-19 pandemic, I uploaded to YouTube a video on my great uncle, George William Watson, who as a soldier in the Canadian Army was killed on the 6th of November 1917. Through George's letters home, period photos and film, George's journey from his home in Arden, Manitoba to the battlefields of Passchendaele was traced. I included a pretty graphic combat scene which I think shows the horror George went through in the last hour or so of his life, but due to its disturbing nature, I requested that YouTube restrict this to viewers 18 years old and above. I want to make clear I requested the restriction and not YouTube, but I think it was the right thing to do. However, I think this restriction severely limited who could or would want to view this video. I think my great uncle George deserved better, and so I am revising this video, taking out the violent combat scene to take the 18 above age restriction off. I also mistakenly included a song that was copyrighted, resulting in a copyright restriction on this video. And so while I am revising this video anyways, I replaced this song. I also decided the ending of the original video was a bit weak, so I'm amending it as well. I am not removing the original video as I think it was still very well done, and will provide a link to it in the comments section below, should you wish to view it. But be aware, the 18 above restriction still applies to it. I will also include a link to George's page on the virtual war memorial maintained by Veterans Affairs Canada, where you can view his letters home and other information regarding him. So, with no further delay, let's view the new amended video. And I'd like to tell you a story of my great uncle, George William Watson, who served as a soldier in World War I in the Canadian Army. George was born on January the 18th, 1883, in the Canadian province of Manitoba, and grew up northwest of Winnipeg on a farm near the village of Arden. George was one of 6 children, born to my great-grandfather, Thomas Oates Watson, and his wife, Anne. George grew up in a family of devout Methodists and became a farmer when he grew up. In 1914, World War I began when George was a young man of 31 years of age. The war raged on in a stalemate of trench warfare with no end in sight. On June 10th, 1916, George answered his nation's call and enlisted in the Canadian Army in the 200th Battalion, CEF. The Canadian Expeditionary Force, or CEF, was the army raised by Canada for service overseas in the First World War. About 630,000 Canadians enlisted between 1914 and 1918, most of them volunteers. The 200th Battalion was a unit in the Canadian Expeditionary Force during the First World War. Based in Winnipeg, Manitoba, the unit began recruiting during the winter of 1915-16 in that city. When I enlisted in the Canadian Armed Forces Reserves in 1978, I went through basic training at the age of 17, and even at that young age, getting through the training was a challenge. I cannot imagine trying to do it at 33 years of age, like George Watson did. The now private George Watson would most likely have received most, if not all, his military training while in Canada at Camp Hughes, located 132 kilometers west of Winnipeg. The camp was named after Major General Sir Samuel Hughes, who was the Minister of Militia and Defense at that time. In 1916, over 25,000 troops were trained at Camp Hughes, making it the second largest community in Manitoba outside of Winnipeg. In its heyday, Camp Hughes boasted 6 movie theaters, numerous retail shops, a hospital, post office, prison, and a large heated in-ground pool. To facilitate training, the camp included rifle and grenade ranges and an extensive system of trench works to familiarize recruits trained here with trench warfare before they were sent to Europe. We will now continue Private George Watson's story with a series of letters he wrote home from England. These letters were written to his younger brother, Thomas Watson, who just happens to be my grandfather. The first letter is missing its first and last pages, so it is unknown when it was written, but most likely the letter was written just after George arrived in England. We expect to go on leave in about a week, and I intend to go see Uncle George Beacock and family if I am spared. I saw Bert Cooney and John Duncan since we got to this camp. They are in the 14th Reserve and have to wear the kilts. And they told me that Frank Dale had gone to France before them. I did not see them yesterday, so they may be gone by this time. The drill is different here to what was at Camp Hughes, and they give us more blankets for our beds than we had there in the warm weather. We have 4 each at present, and it will be easy to take a bath now any time we like after parade hours. I have been on drill 3 or 4 days this week. They do not work us too hard, and they change the different things more than in Canada. Not too long at one time, so it gives us a change. How are everyone keeping? Tell Mother I will write to her next time, so you must let her read this. I got her second letter she sent at Aldershot's 3 days after we got to this camp, and the Sunday school papers she sent while we were on the ship in Halifax Harbor. We can see the sea from our parade ground. It is about a mile away to the east, and it looks all right. I will have to close as. The letter ends here, as the rest of it is missing. Shorncliffe Camp, May 25, 1917. Dear Tom, well, another 24th of May has passed and gone, and we were to the Folkestone Sports in the afternoon. It was not too bad a sports day. Baseball between 2 of the reserves. Then they had a relay race, and the 11th Reserve won by a long lead. I think that they won the 100-yard dash. We are out of quarantine once more and moved up to the 11th parade ground, but I am still under canvas. We're having fine sunny weather, and the sun seems very hot. Is Annie still working in the bank? I find this a little harder to figure up, but I think I can get accustomed to it. We were paid £1 6 today. There is no 200th Battalion, so you'd better send my letters to Private George W. Watson, number 922595, C Company, 11th Reserve, CEF, Shorncliffe Camp, England. Please send me all the news from over there. With lots of love to you all. I am your loving brother, George. Now that we've taken Private George Watson from his home in Arden, Manitoba, and brought him all the way to Shorncliffe in England, I think it would be a good spot to explain how the Canadian Expeditionary Force, or CEF, was organized in World War I. The Canadian Expeditionary Force was created by the Canadian government in 1914 and sent to Europe as Canada's contribution to the defense of the British Empire in World War I. The mobilization of the CEF was a haphazard and highly politicized affair. Defense Minister Sir Sam Hughes oversaw the mobilization personally. Dozens of named infantry regiments of the Canadian Militia, as the Reserve Army was known at that time, were ignored in favor of creating numbered battalions, often from more than one militia regiment. The numbered battalions formed for the CEF were comprised of men recruited from the same districts of Canada, so that men recruited in Manitoba would serve in battalions made up of men from Manitoba. Men from Alberta would serve in battalions made up of men from Alberta, and so on. Some of the battalions created for the CEF were deployed to France and Belgium as combat units. Some of the battalions formed were left in England as training units, which would send reinforcements to the combat battalions as needed to replace casualties suffered by those units in France and Belgium. As additional recruits were needed, new CEF regiments were formed in Canada, which would be disbanded and absorbed into the training battalions in England as they shipped out to England. It was therefore common for a soldier in the Canadian Army to serve in a number of CEF battalions during his service in World War I. In George Watson's case, he was placed in the 200th Battalion CEF when he enlisted on June the 10th, 1916, and would have received his training in Canada as part of that battalion. When the 200th Battalion arrived in England, it was disbanded on May the 14th, 1917, and was absorbed by the 11th Reserve Battalion stationed in southeast England. The men serving with the 11th Reserve were used to reinforce the 16th, 27th, 43rd, 78th, and 107th Battalions, operating in France and Belgium in 1917. Excerpts from the letter written on July the 5th, 1917, in Shorncliffe, England. Dear Tom, I received your very welcome letter tonight when we came off parade, and I was very pleased to get all the news. I also got one from Mother and one the night before last. Tell her I will answer hers on Sunday. As you will see, I am still in England and may be here for some time. I wish you many happy returns of your birthday, and also Father's when it comes, as it will before this letter reaches you. I am glad to hear you have all the seeding done, and hope you will have a good crop. You certainly have been putting some work on that barley land, and I hope that it pays you. It is too bad about how Fred McRae has been taken and made the great sacrifice in this great struggle to get peace on this earth. I go to church at the YMCA hut every Sunday evening when not on duty, and we usually have to parade to church on Sunday mornings. They generally give us very good talks, and it makes us think a little more of home and our Father in heaven, who is taking care of us, although some try to scoff and make fun of this. I will close for this time, wishing you good health and happiness to you all, as I am well, and I hope you all are the same. With lots of love from your loving brother, George. Excerpts from the letter dated 27th August, 1917. Dear Tom, I am back to the 11th Reserve again, but not in the same company. We came back last evening and have done nothing since until today, when we were shoveling coal. And tonight it is raining. so I am trying to answer part of the letters that came in lately. I did not write yesterday, but read the Sunday school paper that Mother sent. Most of the squad that I was with before I went to school and the balance of the 200th men are on draft now and expect to go on to France this week. I think this is about all the news, so goodbye for the present, and I wish you success in your business and friendships. Your loving brother, George. After this letter was wrote, Private George Watson was sent as a replacement to the 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg, and wound up in the area of Ypres in Flanders, Belgium. The area in and around Ypres in Belgium had been in contention throughout World War I, and when Private George Watson joined his unit here in the late summer and fall of 1917, the Third Battle of Ypres, or as it is more commonly known, the Battle of Passchendaele, was raging. Launched on 31 July 1917 under the command of Sir Douglas Haig, the Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force, this offensive in Flanders had aimed to seize strategic railheads and capture the German submarine bases on the Belgian coast. The village of Passchendaele was located on a ridgeline east of Ypres, and its capture would allow Allied artillery to fire down into German positions, hopefully allowing them to break out of the Ypres salient to reach their ultimate objectives on the Belgian coast. The attack got underway with a tremendous artillery barrage, which not only forewarned the Germans, but also ground the battlefield into potholes and dust. Unceasing heavy rain, which began the first day of the attack, and shell fire reduced the battlefield to a vast bog of bodies, water-filled shell craters, and mud in which the attack ground to a halt. After months of fighting, Passchendaele Ridge was still stubbornly held by German troops. In October 1917, General Douglas Haig ordered Lieutenant General Arthur Currie, the Canadian commander, to bring his 4 divisions to Belgium and join the fight on the village of Passchendaele. Currie objected to what he considered a reckless attack, arguing it would cost about 16,000 Canadian casualties for no great strategic gain. Ultimately, however, Currie had little choice. After lodging his protest, he made careful plans for the Canadian assault. Currie found the battlefield, a vast expanse of mud, riddled with water-filled shell craters with unburied dead and rotting soldiers. Soldiers and pack animals had to pick their way along narrow duck-walk tracks that wound among the craters. Slipping off the tracks carried the risk of drowning in craters big enough to swallow a house. Currie ordered the removal of the dead and the building and repair of roads and tramways to help in the movement of men, armaments, and supplies on the battlefield in preparation for his attack on Passchendaele. And here we will find the 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg, Manitoba Regiment, with its newest rookie soldier, Private George Watson. In our story, Private George Watson is now with his unit in the Ypres salient in Belgium. We will now turn to the war diary of the 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg, to learn what George and his fellow soldiers in the 27th Battalion were doing in November 1917. The war diary of a Canadian CEF battalion in World War I was basically a series of daily reports that listed unit strength, activities, and orders received and carried out by the battalions in the field. Using this diary, we can trace what the 27th Battalion was doing on a day-to-day basis over 100 years ago. Excerpts of the War Diary, 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg, November 4th, 1917. Security designation, secret. The battalion will move from Erie Camp in Brondhoek to the Ponset area today. The route will be Brondhoek Station and then by rail to Ypres. The battalion will parade at 7:10 a.m. and entrain at Brondhoek at 8 a.m. The train is scheduled to arrive at Ypres at 8:45 a.m. Great care will be taken to leave all billets in a clean and sanitary condition. Quartermaster will arrange for a hot meal at noon at Ponset. All haversacks containing the men's surplus kit will be turned into quartermaster stores at Ponset on the 4th. All blankets must be rolled neatly in bundles of 10, piled at the quartermaster stores by 6:30 a.m. Officers and NCOs will see that blankets are rolled according to orders. There was considerable cause for complaint in this connection last move. By orders of Major AJS Transit, Acting Adjutant, 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg. On the night of November 5th and 6th, 1917, the battalion will move to Hill 37. Excerpts of the War Diary, 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg. Narrative of operations covering the attack on Passchendaele, November 4th to 7th, 1917. The 27th Battalion attacked in conjunction with the 36th Battalion on the right and the 31st Battalion on the left. The frontage allotted to the battalion was 935 yards. The distance to the final objective was 900 yards. 0 hour was 6 a.m., November 6, 1917. Promptly at 6 a.m., our artillery barrage came down. The attack proceeded exactly as planned, and all objectives were captured by 7:40 a.m. The position was consolidated, with a line of outposts and a front line forward of the ridge and a support line just to the rear of the crest of the ridge. On November 7th and 8th, 1917, the 27th Battalion was relieved in the newly captured positions at Passchendaele by D Company and 1st Platoon of B Company of the 23rd Battalion. The 27th Battalion, on completion of relief, was moved to the camp at Ponset. On November the 8th, 1917, the battalion moved from Ponset to Lake Erie Camp at Brondhoek. On November 6, 1917, the village of Passchendaele was taken by Canadian troops, but at a terrible cost. Between October 26th and November 6th, 1917, 15,654 Canadian troops laid down their lives. The total cost of the battle was 275,000 British, French, Canadian, Australian, and New Zealander lives lost, and 220,000 Germans killed. The ground gained in this battle was later taken back by the Germans in 1918. To see how the 27th Battalion and Private George Watson made out, we return to the War Diary of the 27th Battalion. Excerpts from the War Diary, 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg. Narrative of operations covering the attack on Passchendaele. Prisoners captured, 4 officers, 71 other ranks. Total, 75. Machine guns captured, 9. Killed in action, Captain, Acting Major, Charles Russell Stinton, MC. Captain Sidney Harold Wilson, 42 other ranks. Died of wounds, 1 other rank. Missing, 10 other ranks. Wounded, Captain, Acting Major George Sari Robinson, Captain Bernard Dyson Coombs, Lieutenant Charles Henry Brown, Lieutenant William Darling, Lieutenant Reginald Stinton Black, Lieutenant Charles Edward Human Koo, Lieutenant Albert Victor Bonner, Lieutenant Charles Dufferin Robinson, 163 other ranks. Wounded but still on duty, Lieutenant Acting Captain Raymond Seller, Lieutenant Joel Emil Dory, Lieutenant John Philpott Hearn, 13 other ranks. Signed, Lieutenant Colonel P.J. Daly, commanding 27th Battalion, City of Winnipeg. One of the 10 men listed as missing in action on November the 6th, 1917 by the 27th Battalion was Private George William Watson. He was never seen or heard of again. His body was never found, and so he has no known grave. There is no photo of George, and he never married and had no children. George's younger brother Thomas, to whom he wrote the letters used in this video, died in 1971 and would have been among the last people living who knew George in person. Even though George has no grave, his name is still preserved in a number of places. George's name appears on one of the plaques of the Menin Gate in Ypres, Belgium, among the 55,000 men of the British and Commonwealth forces who disappeared without a trace in the Ypres salient in World War I. In the Book of Remembrance for World War I, kept in the Peace Tower of the House of Parliament in Ottawa, George's name appears second from the top on page 346, which is displayed by a grateful nation every July the 27th to acknowledge his sacrifice. George also has a page on the virtual war memorial maintained by Veterans Affairs Canada. On this page, you will find all the letters used in this video, along with other information on George. I'll include a link to this page in the comments section below in case you would like to take a look. On August 3rd, 2022, while in Manitoba, I made the journey to George Watson's hometown of Arden to visit the Lansdowne Municipality War Memorial located in the village in order to see his name and pay my respects. Uncle George, I hope wherever you are that you are resting in peace. Thank you for defending the freedom I enjoy today. I hope this video helps to preserve your memory.